Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a plunge into Neo,
Yeah.
a platform that describes itself as, well, a first-class smart contract platform.
hmm
And it's got this really ambitious goal, aiming to be the foundation for what they call the open network for the smart economy.
That's right. And for this, we're digging into the Neo-defined section on their own site, neo.org. So, straight from the source.
Getting it direct. So our mission here really is to get a handle on the core concepts behind Neo. Its history, where it came from, and what its ultimate vision is.
I got it.
The goal is that by the end, you, the listener, should have a pretty clear picture of what Neo is and, frankly, why it matters in the whole blockchain landscape.
Makes sense.
Okay, so let's maybe unpack this first. What is Neo at its core?
Well, fundamentally, it's an open source blockchain platform. And importantly, it's community driven.
Okay.
What's interesting, I think, is how they position themselves. They call it the most feature-complete platform out there for building dApps, decentralized applications.
Right, dApps. So it's not just about sending coins back and forth.
Not at all. It's way more than a simple transaction ledger. It's really designed as a foundation, a base layer, for creating a whole ecosystem of applications.
And a big part of that seems to be how they handle assets, is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A key focus for Neo is digitizing and then automating how assets are managed. And they do this using smart contracts.
Okay, so taking what, stocks or bonds, maybe even physical things.
Yeah, exactly. Stocks, bonds, maybe even, real estate titles, art, representing them digitally.
Right.
And these digital versions can then be managed, traded, whatever, automatically based on the rules you code into those smart contracts.
That sounds like a pretty heavy lift, but I guess they're also providing the tools needed to actually build this stuff.
They are. Neo offers native infrastructure components, things like decentralized storage for data,
Okay.
oracles, which are crucial for connecting the blockchain to real-world data.
Like price feeds or weather information, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They act as bridges, bring that off-chain data onto the chain securely, and they even have a native domain name service.
To make addresses easier to use, presumably,
Yeah.
like website names instead of long strings of characters.
Precisely. Makes the whole thing more user-friendly. It's like
Right.
they're trying to hand developers a pretty comprehensive toolkit for building out this new digital economy.
Like the whole stack, almost. And the end goal, as you said, is this open network for the smart economy. What's the big idea there?
The big picture, yeah. Their vision is basically a future where any asset, and they really stress any asset, digital or physical,
Okay.
can be accessed and managed by people, sure, but also by computer programs. And crucially, with minimal trust needed in intermediaries,
Yeah.
minimal permissions.
That idea of bridging the physical and digital using blockchain, that's where it gets really, really interesting, I think.
It really does.
So Neo didn't just appear out of nowhere. It has a history. Let's look back a bit. How did it start?
It goes back quite a way, actually. Founded in 2014 by Dai Hongfei and Eric Zhang.
And it wasn't called Neo then, was it?
No. Originally, it was AntShares. This is pretty early days for blockchain, before the huge hype cycles we've seen since.
Right, 2014. So they were definitely early movers. When did the tech itself become public?
The first source code hit GitHub in July 2015. And the actual live network, the main net, went live in October 2016.
So concept to working network pretty quickly, relatively speaking.
Yeah, fairly rapid development.
And then came the name change that probably most people in the space remember.
Exactly. 2017 was a big year. AntShares rebranded to Neo, and they also rolled out their updated smart contract system. Smart Contracts 2.0, they called it.
Okay.
That period also saw a lot of global expansion, bringing in a whole wave of new developers onto the platform.
It sounds like that developer community was pretty key, even early on. How did Neo encourage that? Did they, incentivize people?
They did, and it's quite interesting how they did it early on. They recognized the value of community contributions and started giving out NEO tokens as rewards
Ah,
to groups and individuals who were actively building stuff, contributing to the platform. You had groups like COZ, Neo Econo Labs, O3 Labs, as some early examples getting these rewards.
smart move. A good way to kind of bootstrap the ecosystem.
Yeah, it helped build momentum.
Makes sense. You reward the people actually building the thing. Okay, let's fast forward a bit. Neo N3. That seems like a really significant moment. Why was that upgrade so important?
N3, yeah. The project kicked off around June 2018, and it launched properly in 2021. And they describe it as the biggest advancement in Neo's entire history. It wasn't just like a minor tweak,
Not just patches, a fundamental overhaul.
pretty much, a fundamental redesign, enhancement of the whole platform.
And the main goal was this idea of a first all-in-one blockchain development experience. What did that mean in practice?
It meant integrating more core capabilities directly into the platform. N3 brought in powerful native features like that distributed storage we mentioned, the Oracle function, the name service, built right into the foundation. So developers wouldn't need to rely so much on external, maybe less secure third-party solutions.
So more batteries included, less bolting things on for developers?
That's a good way to put it, yeah. N3 also brought big architectural improvements, aimed for a cleaner, more modular design. Think of it like rebuilding an engine to be more efficient, easier to work on.
Okay.
And they also revamped the governance system and the economic model, too.
Why is N3 seen as such a watershed moment for NEO?
Well, connecting it back, this upgrade really showed NEO's commitment to staying competitive. The blockchain space moves incredibly fast, right?
Oh, yeah.
So N3 addressed limitations of the older system and really positioned them for their future goals. It was a major evolution.
NEO's definitely been a player for a while now. What were some of the things that really made them stand out, maybe some of the pioneering aspects early on?
Yeah, they definitely have some notable firsts. We mentioned it, but being the first public smart contract platform founded in China is a pretty significant historical point.
It is. And they also had that unique token setup, didn't they?
They did. NEO was the first blockchain to use a dual token model, NEO and GAS.
Right. How did that work again?
So NEO tokens represent like ownership or shares in the network. Holding NEO gives you governance rights,
Okay.
while GAS is the utility token. You use GAS to pay for things like transaction fees or deploying smart contracts on the network.
And the idea was to separate the investment governance aspect from the day-to-day operational costs.
Exactly. It aimed to make the cost of using the network, the GAS part, more stable, less affected by the price swings of the main NEO governance token. It was quite forward-thinking, trying to solve issues other blockchains were facing.
Interesting. And what about how they agree on transactions, the consensus mechanism?
Right. They were also among the first to implement a BFT-style consensus mechanism, Byzantine fault tolerance.
BFT. Okay. The classic problem of getting computers to agree, even if some are faulty or malicious.
That's the one. BFT ensures the honest participants can still reach agreement. Using BFT early on made NEO seem more robust, more reliable compared to some older consensus methods that couldn't tolerate as many faults.
Now, I remember reading something pretty unusual about their initial fundraising, their token sale.
Ah, yes. This is a really interesting bit of NEO history. NEO is apparently the first, maybe still the only, token sale project that actually returned all the original funds raised.
Return them to the investor.
To the original participants, yeah. Once the project became self-sustaining financially.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely not standard practice. What does that tell you?
Well, it certainly raises questions about their mindset, doesn't it? It suggests, perhaps, a focus on long-term sustainability over just, grabbing cash up front. It's a pretty strong signal about building trust with their community, I'd say.
Definitely paints a picture. And speaking of their approach, they use this term, pragmatic idealism, for how they operate. Can you break that down? What does that mean?
Yeah, pragmatic idealism.
Yes.
It reflects their journey, I think. They started small, just a team in Shanghai.
Right.
But they've grown into a global operation now, over 50 core members. And alongside that, the number of community groups working on NEO has also really ballooned.
So it's not just the core team anymore, far from it.
Not at all. NEO now gets contributions from developers all over the world, people with backgrounds at huge tech companies, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, Samsung, Dell, you name it.
That's a serious talent pool.
It brings a massive amount of experience and different perspectives into the project.
So you've got this core team, this growing global community.
Yeah.
How does it all fit together? Who coordinates what?
Broadly, you've got a few main players.
Yeah.
There's the NEO Foundation. They're like the strategic guides, setting goals, handling funding.
Okay.
Then the core developers, focused on the underlying tech. NEO Global Development pushes for ecosystem growth and adoption. And then all those sponsored community groups contributing in specialized areas.
And that pragmatic idealism idea seems to fit the foundation's role especially, right? This big ideal of decentralization.
Right.
But recognizing that practically you need some coordination to get there. But isn't there a potential conflict there? Could that central guidance slow down true decentralization eventually?
That's the critical balancing act, yeah. They seem to recognize that building something this complex needs some initial, let's say, directed effort to be efficient. The foundation provides that steering,
Hmm.
but the stated long-term goal, especially with N3, is to hand off more and more control to the community through things like the Neo Council. It's a deliberate, phased approach, acknowledging the real-world challenges.
And it's not just about the tech in isolation. They seem aware of the outside world, too.
Exactly. They know blockchain doesn't operate in a vacuum. They emphasize working within existing legal and business frameworks, not just ignoring them.
So engaging with regulators, industry groups.
Yeah, actively participating, helping to shape standards,
Mm.
educate lawmakers, make the tech more accessible overall. It's about building for the future, but also dealing with the present realities, trying to foster responsible innovation.
It's a tricky balance, pushing boundaries while playing by current rules. Now let's circle back to that path to decentralization, particularly with N3. How does that upgrade empower the community specifically?
A huge part of N3 is giving more power to the NEO token holders. With N3, they get to directly participate in governing the network. How? By voting for members of a NEO council.
A neo council, like a board of directors almost, but elected by token holders.
Sort of, yeah. Think of it like a digital democracy for the NEO network itself.
And what does this council actually do? What are their responsibilities?
They have some pretty significant duties.
Right.
Governing the blockchain, running the consensus nodes, the computers that actually validate transactions and keep the network secure.
Okay, crucial stuff.
And setting key network parameters like transaction fees, for example.
So like a city council setting local rules or tax rates. NEO holders get a direct say in these big decisions.
That's the idea. It gives people who hold NEO actual influence over where the platform goes. It's a concrete step towards decentralization.
Mm,
And it makes holding NEO more meaningful for you, the listener, if you're involved, because you get that voice.
definitely. It shifts towards a more distributed, community-led governance model.
Precisely.
Well, this has been a really useful deep dive into NEO. Let's maybe quickly recap the key takeaways. We've looked at its beginnings as ant shares,
Right.
its evolution to NEO, the big N3 upgrade.
Yeah.
We touched on those pioneering bits, the dual tokens, the early BFT adoption.
And that very unique initial fund return, which says a lot.
Yeah, that was striking. And we also explored this pragmatic idealism philosophy, balancing the big dream with, well, practical steps and engaging with the real world.
And understanding that building something complex takes coordination, even as you aim for decentralization.
Right. And ultimately, NEO's mission, based on their own words, is still focused on building that open network for the smart economy, making assets, digital and physical, easier to access and manage with less need for trust or permission.
Which leaves us with a pretty interesting thought for you to chew on. How might this whole concept of a smart economy powered by platforms like NEO actually change how we deal with assets day to day in the future?
What kinds of possibilities does that really unlock for individuals, for businesses, for society?
Yeah, what new opportunities, what shifts could we see? It's definitely a fascinating space to watch.